Part 2. After Rebirth, Boss, she is beautiful and sassy. Author, Beautiful. Chapter 11. Chapter 11 being a guest at Lian's family. The car sped along, the shadows of the trees receding, and it gradually drove towards a quiet house on the outskirts of the city. It was a typical ancient building, covering an extremely large area, with small bridges and flowing water, and was lush and green. There is such a house in Lanchinge, where land is extremely valuable. It seems that this old lady has an unusual status. Yunsu's thoughts turned around but nothing happened. The more the old lady looked at Yunsu, the more friendly she felt. She pulled her into the house with a warm smile. The servants at home were surprised, they hadn't seen the old lady so happy for a long time. "Little girl, you treat this as your own home. I am happy today and let the kitchen cook more dishes." The last sentence was said to the housekeeper. It was hard to reject the warm hospitality, so Yunsu had no choice but to nod. "Grandma, my name is Yunsu, you can just call me by my name." "Okay, Susu." The old lady changed her words very naturally. "Who's here? Look how happy you are." An old man wearing a tang suit and carrying a cane came down from upstairs. He was tall, with white beard and hair, and bright eyes. The old lady said happily, "It's the little girl who sent me to the hospital last time. I just met her in the mall." The old man was stunned, and tried to squeeze out a smile on his serious face. "Then you have to thank me properly. Little girl, come and sit down." After saying this, he looked at Yunsu without leaving a trace. The girl had a tall and straight figure, delicate appearance and eyes. He was so clear and young that he didn't show any timidity when looking into his eyes. Not bad. After inviting Yunsu to sit down in the living room, the old lady called her son. "Zila, are you busy today? Go home for dinner tonight. The little girl came to our house last time." Hearing the joy in the old lady's words, Lianzila was very happy. He agreed to go home for dinner and asked his secretary to postpone an unimportant meeting. Lianzila works in the city center on weekdays, far away from the old house of Lian's family. He only goes back on weekends. As soon as he entered the house, he heard lively conversations and was amazed. Even if the old lady and the old man wanted to thank others, they would not thank them. So enthusiastic, right? "Mom, Dad, I'm back." Lianzila's eyes lit up, and he could recognize his identity when he saw her face to face. Her attitude was neither humble nor arrogant. This little girl was not simple. "Zila, come quickly, this is the little girl from last time." Yunsu. Old lady Lian hurriedly called him over. The middle-aged man with an elegant temperament has a gentle smile, which is easy to make people like him. Yunsu looked at his face and was a little surprised. Isn't this a senior municipal official in Lanchinge? "Hello, Secretary Lian, it's just a little effort." Yunsu replied with a smile. Come on, stop standing, eat first, eat." Old lady Lian invited everyone to sit down and eat. Their eyes met, the two spoke in unison, looking at each other. "Sister Yun, Lian Yu." "Hello, I am Lianzila. Thank you very much for saving my mother." Lianzila looked serious and did not hesitate because the other party was just a little girl. She looked at the time again and wondered, it's already 7 o'clock, why hasn't Xiao come back yet? "Xiao is back. Come on, it was this little girl who saved me when grandma fainted last time." The old lady held Yunsu's hand and smiled. Before he finished speaking, a voice sounded at the door. "Grandma, I heard your voice outside. Why are you so happy?" A tall and thin figure walked in and changed shoes at the entrance. The old lady looked at the two of them in surprise. "You two know each other?" Lian Yu was confused. "Sister Yun, why are you here? This is such a coincidence." Yunsu was also stunned for a moment. "Even Grandma, Lian Yu and I are in the same class. We are all students of number 1 middle school." "What a great classmate." Old lady Lian smiled while stroking her hands. Everyone sat down to eat, and the old lady sat at the head table. She was very happy today, everyone ate happily, and the guests and hosts enjoyed themselves. Lian Yu sat next to Yun Su and asked her quietly, "Sister Yun, you not only saved me, but also saved my grandma. I don't know how to thank you." Yun Su. This is really a coincidence. Anyway, if anything happens in the future, I'll call you and I'll definitely help. Lian Yu clasped his fists in a funny way. Yun Su was speechless. Lian Zilla raised his glass to Yun Su and said, "Yun Su, you and Lian Yu are classmates. Please take care of him in the future. He has been a mess since he was a child, but he has a good heart." The old man of the Lian family has been on the battlefield all his life, making great achievements in battles, and has retired from old age and illness. Fortunately, he has two up-and-coming sons. Lin came to join the army and Lin came to the west to engage in politics. They are both civil and military. This is the reason why the Lian family can still stand today. Lian Donglei has been in the army all year round, and Lian Yu can be said to have been brought up by Lian Zile. Although he is an uncle, he is as close as father and son. Lian Zile is busy with work and rarely has time to relax. Today, Gao Xing drank some wine with the old man and was a little tipsy. Yun Su looked at him and couldn't imagine that such a person would be imprisoned for corruption and bribery only half a year later. The boss of the Lian family was imprisoned for saving him, and the towering tree of the Lian family fell overnight. Yun Su felt a little emotional for a moment. She had a good impression of her family members. After thinking about it, she made a decision. After finishing the meal, Grandpa Lian and Grandma Lian went upstairs temporarily. Yun Su sat next to Lian Zile, pondered for a moment, and said, "Uncle Lian, I know you deserve the most credit for what happened in Lanchinge today, but there is something wrong with you. There may be some villains causing trouble." Lian Zile originally thought that Yun Su wanted to chat with him about some household matters. After hearing Yun Su's words, he looked stern and his eyes were probing. "I don't understand what you are talking about." "Uncle Lian, I don't mean any harm, it's just a kind reminder to be careful of those close to you." Yun Su was not frightened by his cold eyes and remained calm. "I can't help with anything else. I just hope I can provide you with a direction." After Yun Su finished speaking, she went upstairs to say goodbye to Grandpa and Grandma Lian. Lian Zile was sitting alone in the living room, lost in thought. He didn't understand what Yun Su meant. Why would a girl who had just graduated from high school say these things to him? It's the time for a change of office, and there have been some strange movements around him recently. Lian Zile wanted to just sit back and watch, but after listening to Yun Su's words, he decided to investigate carefully. He always keeps to himself and doesn't provoke others, but others don't want to do anything to him. "What are you thinking?" Yun Su went upstairs to say goodbye to Grandpa and Grandma Lian. Grandma Lian reluctantly held her hand and asked the driver to take her home safely. After the English competition, the first monthly exam followed. This monthly exam is very important. Many candidates in the competition will stand out. The teachers of number 1 middle school attach great importance to it, and the exam is much more difficult than before. There was a tense atmosphere in the class, and Yun Su seemed to turn a blind eye, still reading when she should be reading, and playing with her mobile phone when she should be. Ignore the sight of teachers in various subjects. Zhong Xian, the head teacher of Hongji class, has been paying attention to Yun Su's news intentionally or unintentionally since she had an argument with her last time. After hearing about Yun Su's current situation, she sneered repeatedly. She was so self-satisfied. "I really don't know how this kind of student got into the world." Number 1 middle school. Yunyan has been working hard recently. She will crush Yun Su into the mud in this monthly exam and let her parents know who is the daughter of the Yun family. End of this chapter. After Rebirth, Boss, she is beautiful and sassy. Author, beautiful. Chapter 12. Chapter 12, She cheated. God bless me, I will do everything right. Yao Shuij has been chanting with his hands clasped together since the morning. Yunsu couldn't laugh or cry, that's not true. Why do you have to take the exam before my birthday? Susu, you don't know how perverted the teachers in our school are. They can tally up the results the day after the exam and won't let us have a good night's sleep. If I fail the exam, oh, the birthday gift I've been begging for a long time from my dad may be in vain. Yao Shuij was about to cry. It turned out that it was because of this that Yunsu stroked her forehead and then smiled to comfort her. Soon, the 2 days of exams passed in a tense and busy atmosphere. Under the astonished eyes of the invigilator, Yunsu handed in papers for each exam in advance. Many students had no time to react. Yunsu had already left the examination room, leaving the room silent. Sure enough, as Yao Shuij said, number 1 middle school is very efficient in correcting test papers. At night, the lights in the number 1 middle school office are brightly lit, and the teachers are working overtime to tally the scores of various subjects. Teacher Zhong, the first place this time is definitely Li Yan from your class. However, Shen Jinzu from your class has made great progress recently. Maybe the two of them can compete this time. A teacher finished the statistics. After getting the results in the first subject, he said to Zhong Xian, the head teacher of Hongji class, with envy in his tone. Many of the students in number 1 middle school are directly promoted from the junior high school. The teachers know the level of the students well. This student, Li Yan, has a very high IQ and has always been ranked first in the grade. He is praised by the students of number 1 middle school as the existence of learn from God. That's not necessarily the case. I have been teaching for so many years, and Li Yan is the smartest student I have ever seen. It is very difficult to surpass him, Zhong Xian said proudly, with a tone of pride. That's true, the teacher sighed and then went about their business. Zhong Xian, who was far away, laughed when she heard these words. Teacher Wang, whose handwriting you don't recognize. Who else can get full marks for the difficulty of this test paper besides Li Yan from our class? All teachers have sped up the progress. How can this be? She transferred from a township school. Even if her grades were good, how could she come out on top in number 1 middle school where eugenics gathered? This is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Zhong Xian didn't believe that she would let such an outstanding student go with her own hands. Let me see. Hey, whose test paper is this? It's perfect, a teacher of the statistics and mathematics test paper suddenly exclaimed. Hurry up, take apart all the test papers, and quickly tally up the results and rank them. Zhong Xian's uneasiness became more and more intense. No matter how smart a student is, he can't be so terrifying, right? This is no longer something that only a genius can describe. A guess came to Zhong Xian's mind. Yes, no one would be so smart. She should have thought of it a long time ago. Yunsu must have cheated, definitely. Although I don't know how she cheated, she dared to hand in the paper in such a short time. Was she really not afraid of others finding out? Zhong Xian sneered and calmed down. Zhong Xian suddenly felt a bad premonition in her heart. Half an hour later, Zhong Xian slumped down in her chair. She couldn't believe the results calculated on her computer. Her most proud student was only ranked second this time, and the first place name was listed, Yunsu. In the performance column of Yunsu, except for the deduction of points in the Chinese subject, the remaining perfect score is simply blinding. Several teachers nearby immediately gathered around. But, why don't you think you've seen this handwriting often? The teacher was a little confused. He was familiar with the handwriting of the top students in the grade. She walked over with a bright smile, picked up the test paper, looked at it carefully, and the smile froze on her face. No. This is not Li Yan's handwriting. Li Yan is her most proud student, and she knows her handwriting very well. She took several sharp breaths, Her voice was so rapid that the teacher next to her was startled by her. I didn't expect that this method could be used for this problem. A mathematics teacher was full of praise. Before the other teachers could react, she had already torn off the binding of the name of the class on the test paper, and suddenly, two concise and powerful words came into view: Yunsu. How can this be? Zhong Xian's pupils shrank sharply and she yelled crazily in her heart. She suddenly stood up and asked the teachers who were proctoring Yunsu's exam one by one. The answer she got was that Yunsu had submitted the test paper and left the exam room early. Some subjects only started in less than half an hour. This time I got full marks for such a difficult paper. This idea of solving the problem is simply perfect. She deleted Yunsu's results and re-ranked. Li Yan's name occupied the first position again, and she smiled with satisfaction. This matter is not over yet. If you dare to cheat, you must dare to bear the consequences. Early the next morning, students are all familiar with the fact that the school announces results on the second day. It came relatively early. Yao Shuij took Yunsu to look at the results nervously and excitedly. 152, 103, 90, 82, 75, 71, Yao Shuij pushed through the crowd, counting from the back to the front, looking for his name. 58th place, I actually entered the top 60, Yao Shuij exclaimed, laughing and jumping while holding Yunsu in his arms. Yunsu was infected by her and also smiled. Yao Shuij finally calmed down after a while. I'll help you look for it. Susu, your grades must be very good. Huh, Yao Shuij looked through the entire list 3 or 4 times from beginning to end, but could not find Yunsu's name. How come there isn't? She asked strangely, is there something wrong? Lu Yi, who was standing next to her, saw this and laughed. This is the first time I've seen someone who didn't even make the list. How bad their results must be. Not even ranking. She was ranked 30th in her grade this time and was in a very happy mood. Good. Yunsu had glanced at the list when Yao Shuij was looking for her own ranking. She didn't see her name and knew something must have happened. However, before she could get anxious, Yao Shuij became anxious. Let's go, Susu, let's go find Teacher Yan and ask about the situation. Yao Shuij took Yunsu and went to the office to find someone. No need to look for it, Yunsu, come with me. Yan Yu suddenly appeared and said to Yunsu with a complicated look on his face. With everyone watching the excitement, Yunsu comforted Yao Shuij and left with Teacher Yan. Yun Yan, who was hiding in the periphery, looked at Yunsu's back and felt that something must have happened, so she followed quietly. In the dean's office, Zhong Xian was making an impassioned speech. Director, the nature of this matter is too bad. We have been teaching and educating people in number 1 middle school for decades and have an excellent academic style. We have never had such a student. We must expel him as a warning to others. Zhong Xian looked angry. Director Li looked embarrassed. Teacher Zhong, this matter has not been investigated clearly yet, and we cannot make a conclusion. After all, this is not a trivial matter. If there really was a cheating incident, and the student cheated and became the first in the grade, he, the director, could not escape the blame. Zhong Xian came to bang the table with him early in the morning, and he was a little irritated. Zhong Xian looked at him in disbelief. What more evidence do you need? What is there to investigate? Director, think about it for yourself. Can a person who transferred from a rural school get such a score? Do you believe it? Director Li was speechless. Yunsu's results were indeed terrible. Director, Yunsu is here. Yan Yu took Yunsu into the office. Director, do you have anything to do with me? I would like to ask why my name is not on the score list. Before anyone else could speak, Yunsu mentioned it first. You still have the nerve to ask. Zhong Xian really didn't know whether she was brave or confident. Hey, Teacher Zhong, you are here too. Yunsu seemed to have just seen her. Zhong Xian's face turned green. It's just a bigger office, but she still pretended not to see it. Yunsu, Yunsu, I thought you were just a student with poor grades and a big talk. I didn't expect you to cheat in the exam. Tell me, where did the answer come from? Zhong Xian looked at her with a sword-like gaze. Cheating. Yunsu cheated on the monthly exam. Outside the office, Yunyan's eyes suddenly widened, and then she beamed with joy. She quickly took out her mobile phone and dialed the number. Hey, Mom, my sister seems to have made some mistake at school. Please come to school quickly. What? Suzayuling, who was doing a beauty treatment, took off the mask on her face and sat up. In just a few days, Yunsu was causing trouble for her. She was so angry that she trembled, sent a message to Yuntu, and rushed to school. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Rebirth, Boss, she is beautiful and sassy. Author, beautiful. Chapter 13. Chapter 13 I can prove. Teacher Zhong, the matter has yet to be investigated. Isn't it a bit too much for you to say that, Yan? You couldn't help but say. She didn't believe that Yunsu would cheat, but her amazing results made her a little unbelievable. Zhong Xian advised her, Teacher Yan, I understand how you feel, but the facts are before your eyes. Yan Yu was speechless for a moment. Director Li looked at the tall and graceful girl and tried to slow down his voice and said, Student Yunsu, don't be afraid. As long as you tell the truth, the school will deal with it leniently. Director Li, how is this possible? Zhong Xian said unhappily. Director Li waved his hand, and she had to swallow the rest of the words. The three teachers all looked at Yunsu, either with regret, pride, or encouragement. Under the pressure of such a heavy gaze, Yunsu still looked calm and did not panic at all. Teacher Zhong, Director Li, who said that I cheated? Is there any evidence? It's not just because I got better grades in the exam. Which one is better? There is no one better than you in the whole school. If I don't suspect you of cheating, who will I suspect? What? Cheating, Yunsu, you actually did such a thing. How did I teach you? A scream came from the door, and it was Suzayuling who hurried to the school. She was so shocked and angry that she couldn't believe it. Yunsu, Yunyan, both have the surname Yun, is it possible? How do you prove it? When Suzayuling heard Zhong Xian's decisive tone, she glanced at the transcript and was shocked. The doubtful questions in her mind just now disappeared instantly, replaced by an even more angry look on her face. Yunsu, you still haven't admitted your mistake. I didn't expect you to be so brave. Suzayuling was stunned. Yes, she didn't even ask a question, so she subconsciously felt that what the teacher said was true. Yunsu is my eldest daughter. She was raised in the countryside and she is twin to Yunyan. Suzayuling repeated Yuntu's previous words, even though she didn't want to admit it now. Yunsu's face, which had been calm just now, darkened instantly, and with a coldness, she said she could do it, but her dad couldn't. Yunsu smiled, but the smile was creepy. Since everyone thinks I'm cheating, I can prove it to myself. You're apologizing for me before it's confirmed. Mom, you don't believe me so much. You didn't even ask me a question. Yunsu's voice was inexplicably cold. Zhong Xian looked at her in disbelief. Mother Yunyan, I didn't know Yunsu was your daughter before, but I think since you can raise a child like Yunyan, how could Yunsu be like this? Do you know? She took the monthly exam, he cheated and even got to the top of his grade. This is a serious matter. Yunyan and Yunting were children of other families since childhood. Suzayuling used to like to go to school to hold parent-teacher meetings, earning the envy of other parents. Parents would also ask her for advice on child education. She had never been as embarrassed in school as she is today. It felt like he had been beaten. his face was burning. I'm sorry, Teacher Jean. For some reason, Yunsu didn't grow up with us and was taught badly by others. Don't be angry. Suzayuling had never been so humble before. She subconsciously pushed the blame away, thinking that it was all Yun Daejin. The problem? Twins. This didn't look anything like him at all. Everyone was confused but didn't say anything. Jeon Xian didn't expect that Yunsu was still stubborn even at this time. You still don't admit it? You want evidence, right? Can you get such a score? She slapped Yunsu's transcript on the table. Hello, aren't you Yunyun's parent? Are you and Yunsu? Yunyun was in Jeon Xian's class and had naturally met Suzayuling. She glanced at the two of them and was a little surprised by their relationship. How could those series of perfect scores be obtained by Yunsu? It's very simple, just make another set of papers. Yunsu said it easily, but the others were shocked. It's true that I can't even see the coffin without crying. Jeon Xian sneered, okay, if you can't prove it, leave number 1 middle school. Our number 1 middle school will not accept students like you. Suzayuling was anxious, how could this be allowed? What if I prove it? Yunsu's smile did not change. You say. I want you to apologize to me in front of the whole school and admit that you framed me. Yunsu stated his conditions. Jeon Xian didn't expect that Yunsu would dare to make a request. He thought she was struggling to death. She laughed angrily and agreed, okay. Jeon Xian went to take the B paper of this monthly exam. Every time the school takes the exam, there will be 2 sets of questions. Many teachers will try their best to show off their skills, so paper B is usually much more difficult than paper A, especially this time. Paper B of the exam was completely competitive. Jeon Xian handled the set of questions from finalization to printing alone. She concluded that there was no possibility of Yunsu cheating. Due to time constraints, she only gave Yunsu math and science papers. She just wanted Yunsu to admit defeat and didn't want to waste too much time. Suzayuling didn't know how things developed like this. She sat aside, anxious and angry. Yunsu had really embarrassed her. Yunsu's expression did not change. She took the test paper and glanced at the question. It was very difficult, very difficult. But to her, it was no different from elementary school arithmetic problems. She wrote quickly, and the answers appeared on the test paper one by one, as if she didn't need to think at all, and her beautiful handwriting poured out. Jeon Xian didn't take a closer look at all. She just felt that Yunsu was pretending. When Yan Yu saw this, he suddenly recalled that the entrance examination papers for Yunsu on the first day he came here also looked like this, and her eyes suddenly lit up. Could it be? She stared at Yunsu with good eyes. In just over half an hour, Yunsu finished the test paper. She stopped writing and waited for them to review it. Jeon Xian picked up the test paper with a mocking look on her face and was about to make a sarcastic comment. Suddenly her eyes were fixed on the paper. How can it be? She turned over the test paper and it was all right. She couldn't find a single fault. How could that be possible? Seeing Jeon Xian's horrified expression, Yan Yu felt that something unexpected had happened. She snatched the test paper and looked at it carefully. The smile on her face grew bigger and bigger as she looked at it. Ha 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 ha, it's all right. It's so true, perfect. Yunsu, you are really a genius. She was almost stunned by Yunsu's surprise. It was like pie in the sky. Director Lee looked at the 2 completely different expressions and immediately flipped through the test papers. After a while, he looked at Yunsu in disbelief. What kind of monster genius is this? Director Lee's hands were shaking a little. They almost fired such a genius. He felt scared for a while, but it was okay. Jeon Xian looked lost. She didn't want to believe that this kind of genius had been given away by her own hands. If it had been so, if... Teacher Jeon, I didn't cheat. You seem very disappointed. I hope to receive your apology as soon as possible. After saying that, Yunsu left the office directly without giving them a single extra glance. They all had different moods. Suzayuling was confused when Yan Yu called him a genius, and she still hasn't reacted yet. Mom, what's wrong with you? Yunyan had just finished a class and saw Suzayuling sitting on a bench on campus and ran over to ask, eager to know the outcome of the matter. Looking at Suzayuling's expression, Yunsu would at least get a demerit. Thinking of this, she could hardly suppress the smile on her lips. Xiao Yan, they say your sister is a genius, do you know? Your sister didn't cheat, she is really number one. Suzayuling seemed to be still in her dream. Director Li just asked her about Yunsu's details since she was a child. I was hemming and hawing and couldn't answer the question at all, and I didn't even know how to get out of the office. Genius. First place. No cheating. Every word Yunyan was familiar with, but she didn't seem to understand the meaning at all. Who is this talking about? Yunsu. How could she be a genius? From an angle that Suzayuling couldn't see, Yunyan's eyes were about to burst. End of this chapter. After Rebirth, boss, she is beautiful and sassy. Author, beautiful. Chapter 14. Chapter 14 well deserved. Suzayuling was still in a daze. She asked Yunyan, Xiao Yan, how did you do in the exam this time? I did well in the exam. Yunyan passed the 13th grade exam this time, which was already her best ranking. But now under the halo of Yunsu's first place genius, she couldn't say it at all. Then you have to study hard with your sister. Suzayuling's eyes were filled with relief. She never thought that her biological daughter, whom she despised, was so outstanding, and that she also had a well-behaved and sensible daughter like Xiao Yan. But Yunsu, I have to change my temper. I dared to talk to her in that tone in the office just now. Suzayuling gave Yunyan a few more instructions and left the school. Holy shit, what are you doing? Why did you change it? The school is very efficient. Director Li personally printed out the re-ranking results. He was so happy that he ran to publish the list. Students, there is something wrong with the results just announced. This time will prevail. The crowd suddenly became commotion, and everyone gathered around to check their results again. Everyone, look at this. Look at this. What is this? A boy screamed, pointing to the first column of the rankings with trembling hands. An unfamiliar name occupied the top spot. The scene was silent for a moment, and then boiled like boiling water the next second. Mine too, what's going on? What are they doing? Li Yan turned around impatiently and asked his desk mate. Well, my total score has not changed. Why did it drop one place? In Hengji's class, the boy sat by the window, with handsome eyebrows and a delicate and beautiful profile. Inexplicably, many people in the class today were looking at him with a vague look. How so? Lu Yi clenched her hands, unable to believe this fact. I've never seen him score anything other than first place in the exam. Isn't this the transfer student from class 14? Didn't you say she was transferred from the countryside? Yunyan looked at the bulletin board through the crowd, her eyes seemed to be quenched with poison, and she didn't know what she was thinking. No, what's wrong? He knew in his mind that the score would basically not differ by more than 10 points from what he predicted, and he didn't bother to squeeze in with others. Brother Yan, you are in second place this time. The desk mate looked at his face and swallowed. The transfer student from class 14 is first place. Li Yan is actually the second place. Who is Yunsu? How did she become number one? Yunsu, he chewed the name. I will definitely not lose to you next time. He was aroused to be competitive for the first time in a long time. His desk mate looked at him carefully and said, Brother Yan, have you checked the results? All the students were shocked. The news spread as fast as wings. When Lu Yi heard the news, her happy mood suddenly dropped to freezing point. She ran out to see in disbelief. On the bulletin board, Her ranking was actually she really dropped one spot, but the person she hated so much was looking down at everyone from a high position. Li Yan's eyes flashed with surprise. This was the first time that he was not the first, which was a bit interesting. There was no one on the bulletin board anymore. Li Yan walked over and saw the names in the first row. The score difference between the two was more than 20 points. Is this a score that a person can get? It's almost a perfect score. Sister Yun, you are so awesome. Yunsu received the attention gift from the whole class as soon as she entered the classroom, and Lian Yu ran over and said excitedly. His own grades have always been at the middle level, so he was not surprised. But when he saw Yunsu's grades, he was so shocked that his eyes almost fell out. As expected of me, Sister Yun, you are the of learning. It was rare for Qin Chen not to sleep. He looked at her with a hint of admiration in his surprised eyes. Yao Shuij was so shocked that she couldn't speak. Although she knew that Yunsu's grades would not be bad, she didn't expect that they would be so good. The number one in the grade was her desk mate. This is even happier than her own grades improving. When Yunsu returned, it was rare that the whole family gathered together and sat in the restaurant, not using their chopsticks, as if they were waiting for her to come back, and they didn't care that she came back late. Suzayuling kindly asked her to wash her hands and eat quickly. Yuntu took a serious look at his biological daughter for the first time. Originally, in his heart, Yunsu could not compare with Yunyan, whom he had carefully raised, but what Suzayuling told him today changed his mind. He did not expect that even without careful training and high-quality education, Yunsu would not be covered in dust and still grow so dazzlingly. He even personally picked up food for Yunsu, and asked Yunsu gently if he had enough money, and if there was anything he wanted, he could ask for it. Yunjing's mood was also very complicated. Today, many people around her were talking about the arrival of a new student in the first grade of high school. She was simply of learning. She beat Li Yan and won the first place. Her terrifying scores were also widely circulated in the school forum. There were many every time he wanted to tell others that Yunsu was his biological sister, but for some reason he just couldn't. The family ate the meal happily on the surface, but Yunyan was uncharacteristically taciturn and lowered her head to eat, wondering what she was thinking. After the monthly exam, Yunsu's name was known to everyone in the school. She continued to go her own way despite all kinds of eyes, but she didn't know that someone was already preparing to dig a hole for her. Mathematics teacher Lao Li almost passed away with joy after seeing Yunsu's results. He knew very well how difficult this exam was. Yunsu's perfect score was enough to prove her strength. She must participate in the mathematics competition. He also chose to forget about her performance before. Geniuses are always different from others. Yunsu, come to my office. Lao Li stopped her after the math class. In the office, he took out a piece of paper and handed it to Yunsu. Please fill in this. Yunsu took it. CMO. You don't know, right? Lao Li was a little speechless. National Mathematical Olympiad. I know, but what does this have to do with me? Lao Li was stunned. He never expected that Yunsu would not want to participate. This competition is very valuable. As long as you get first place in the province, you can get admission to many schools. If you can be selected for the national training team, the school will basically choose. Lao Li thought she didn't know the importance of this competition, so he explained it clearly to her carefully. After hearing what he said, Yunsu still had an attitude that it had nothing to do with her. I don't want to participate, you'd better find someone else. Finally she felt relaxed. She didn't want to find something to do for herself. You are the most mathematically minded person I have ever seen. You should not be limited to ordinary exams, as that will only waste your talent, Lao Li said earnestly. I have been teaching for more than 10 years. 1980 was the first time our country participated in IMO. In 2001, I participated in the competition and found out that there are so many geniuses in the world and so many people who love mathematics. How many times did we win the IMO in the past? Laurel, who is almost like a hegemon, says that students in our country have always been known for their ability to take exams, but in recent years their results have become increasingly unsatisfactory. Last year we didn't even make it into the top 3. Do you know what other countries say? Said that we only work hard and do not understand mathematics at all, let alone the beauty of mathematics. Lao Li's voice was gentle, meaning he was sad, and there seemed to be a trace of tears flashing in the corners of his eyes. Yunsu looked at him. He was a thin, average, and not tall middle-aged man, but his eyes shone with the sincerity of a young man, which was the light of his incomparable love for mathematics. She has seen this kind of light among countless researchers in the interstellar world. In the past, she only regarded research as work and did not understand why so many people had such great passion and would give almost everything. Now, she seems to understand a little bit. This is something called faith. She was silent for a while and said, "Okay, I'll join the competition." Accepted. Then fill out the form quickly. Lao Li instantly regained his cold expression. Is there something wrong? He plays me. Yunsu gritted his teeth and filled out the registration form. End of this chapter. After Rebirth, boss, she is beautiful and sassy. Author, beautiful. Chapter 15. Chapter 15 Birthday Troubles. After registering for the mathematics competition, all registered students will form a mathematics competition class. Not everyone is as perverted as Yunsu. Many students are talented in mathematics but have never been exposed to competitions. The ideas for answering competition questions are very different. These are all it requires constant practice, so there is an extra class every afternoon after school. Number 1 Middle School, as a key prestigious school, has about 20 students in the mathematics competition class, and some schools even have no students participating at all. Except for Yunsu and the top students in other classes, most of them were students from Hongji class. Li Yan was among them, and Shen Jinzhu, who was previously nicknamed the second child in 10,000 years. She is very interested in Yunsu, who brought Li Yan down from the altar. This is the last classmate in our math class, everyone must know him. Lao Li is the head teacher of the math class. Li Yan by the window raised his head with interest. This was the first time he saw Yunsu in person. The girl had cold eyebrows and a cold temperament, which was as unpredictable as the wind blowing outside the window. Sit here. Sit here, a little girl wearing thick beer bottle glasses waved to Yunsu desperately, looking excited. Yunsu did not refuse and walked to her side to sit down. Hello, my name is Shen Jinzhu. You don't need to introduce me. I know you. You are really awesome. I didn't expect that you would accomplish what I have been working hard for several years, Shen Jinzhu said with joy, and she pointed can surpass Li Yan in terms of performance and win the first place. Yunsu also smiled, this little girl has a pretty cute personality. The preliminary round of the mathematics competition is almost a month away, time is a bit tight, and everyone is working very hard. The girl in waitress uniform was scolded by the man. She lowered her head and almost cried. She kept bowing and apologizing, I'm sorry, I will definitely compensate you. Soon, the weekend arrived, and Yao Shuich's birthday also arrived as promised. Here, your gift. Yunsu handed over the beautifully wrapped gift. He swallowed his saliva, there were indeed walls between people. He turned around with the answer. If he still couldn't understand the answer, then he didn't need to stay in the mathematics competition class. The parents of the Yao family have heard Yunsu's name countless times from their daughter's mouth. When they saw her today, her temperament was indeed extraordinary. The parents of the Yao family had a good impression of her, and Yunsu also greeted her politely. Dad, Mom, this is the deskmate I often mention to you, Yunsu, she is amazing. With the first person to eat crabs, other students were bold enough to ask Yunsu questions. Slowly, everyone discovered that she actually had a good temper. She would not refuse any students who came to ask questions. Su Tingqing also gained an understanding of his strength. Yunsu nodded, glanced at the questions on his test paper, casually pulled out a piece of paper, wrote out the steps to solve the problem twice and handed it to him. If you don't understand, ask me again. There was no one in the class who had not heard of Yunsu's name. He was a little afraid of being rejected when he looked at Yunsu and kept away from strangers. Well, Yunsu, can you help me look at this question? A polite boy in the front row turned around and said hesitantly. Thank you. Susu Yao Shuij happily took it and opened it in front of Yunsu. It was the exquisite watch from last time. Yao Shuij happily put it on her hand and turned it around beautifully. I admired it. The birthday party was not large in scale. We only invited acquaintances to get together. Everyone sat around the table, chatting and laughing, and the atmosphere was great. There was a noise in the hall outside. Yao Shuij comes from a good family. His birthday party was held at the famous private restaurant Yulan in Lancheng. The architectural style was Su-style garden, with small bridges and flowing water and kuyuan and cloisters. The rooms were decorated quietly and elegantly. The boy was stunned. He had just doubted whether Yunsu had understood the question, but he had already solved it. Originally, he thought it was too exaggerated to say that Yunsu finished answering the test paper in less than half an hour on the school forum, but now it seems that the pattern is simply too small. Are you smart? My clothes are very expensive, how can I do things with such careless hands? A rough voice sounded, and everyone in the hall followed the sound. The girl is small, has short hair, and her tearful round eyes are very cute. Compensate? Can you afford to pay? Do you know how much these clothes cost? How long will you have to work before you can afford to pay? The man glared, furious. The surrounding diners were interrupted from their meal and tried to persuade the man not to embarrass a little girl, but the man refused to let her go. How much? I'll give it to her. A slightly cold female voice sounded. The man turned around and saw a young girl in simple clothes. It was Yunsu, who had almost finished eating and was about to leave. He sneered, little girl, this is not a place for you to show off as a hero. Let's be honest, how much? Yunsu was a little impatient. My outfit is custom made, so I still have to give you 50,000 yuan, right? The man was obviously talking loudly, and Yunsu didn't want to argue with him, so she took out her mobile phone and prepared to transfer money to him. Yunsu, why are you here? What happened? An elegant and warm voice sounded. Yunsu turned around unexpectedly and saw that it was Lian Zile, whom he had met once before. The man was wearing a well-tailored suit. He held a high position all year round and had a calm and confident temperament. He was followed by several serious-looking people. There was obviously something serious to discuss. Lian Zile spoke to her in a very friendly tone, as if he were treating a junior in the family. He really thanked and appreciated this little girl. He didn't take what Yunsu said to him last time seriously, but he was always cautious in doing things. He quietly went to investigate with the mentality of rather trusting what he had than trusting what he didn't. Unexpectedly, he found some clues, and they came from people he trusted around him. It was already a cool autumn in Lancheng. He broke out in a cold sweat, and then he was afraid. If Yunsu didn't remind him, if he didn't take it seriously, then he couldn't imagine the result. Uncle Lian, I don't need to bother you with a small matter. Yunsu said hello with a smile. The assistant next to Lian Zile glanced at Yunsu in surprise. Whose child is this? He had followed Lian Zile for many years, so he could naturally hear the genuine concern in Lian Zile's words. When the man who acted mischievously in public saw Lian Zile's face, his expression changed drastically and his pupils tightened. He was recently fighting for a municipal project, so he naturally recognized Lian Zile's identity. Who is this girl? Such a big background. The man knew that he had hit a brick wall today, and he complained in his heart. He waved his hands hastily, "Forget it, I miss you as a little girl, forget it, and you don't have to pay for the clothes." After saying that, he ran away immediately, for fear that even the secretary would remember his face, and the municipal government. The project is gone. The girl was stunned. Before she could realize what happened, the crisis was over. She knew that it was because of Yunsu that the man let her go. She quickly took out a pen and paper from her pocket and wrote down her contact information, then stuffed it into Yunsu's hand. "I will definitely repay you," the girl said, wiping her tears and continuing to work. Yunsu looked at the note in his hand with deep eyes, as if he was lost in memories. "Do you know this girl?" Lianzilla asked casually. "Do not know." Seeing that Yunsu didn't want to say more, he didn't even ask Zilla again. The two chatted casually for a few words. Lianzilla asked Yunsu to go to Lian's house for dinner when he had time. The old lady often talked about her. Yunsu thought of the old lady who was extremely enthusiastic about her and agreed with a smile. Yao's father, who had just settled the bill not far away, saw this scene. He was the director of the municipal office, so he naturally recognized Lianzilla. He wanted to go up and say hello, but he saw that he and Yunsu were chatting happily, so he didn't go up to disturb him. "Who is this classmate of yours?" Yao's father asked his daughter. "I don't know, the school said she came from the countryside." Yao Shuij also blinked in confusion. Can a country girl get to know a senior city official in Lanchinj? Father Yao looked at the watch on his daughter's hand and saw that it was worth a lot of money. "This classmate of yours is not a simple person, you must not offend her," Father Yao warned his daughter. Yao Shuij looked at her father speechlessly. She and Susu have a good relationship. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Rebirth, Boss, she is beautiful and sassy. Author, beautiful. Chapter 16. Chapter 16. Prisoners meet. Yunsu turned his head when he left Yulan and glanced at the girl who was still busy. He rarely showed a sincere smile, which was full of nostalgia. In an instant, time stretched out, and those years appeared in Yunsu's mind. The girl's name is Qingyu, a very beautiful name, but she has never met any good people in her life, nor has she encountered anything lucky. Her father died young when she was young, and she remarried with her mother. Her stepfather had a bad temper, and he was kind to them in the first few years. Later, he gradually revealed his true nature. He drank and gambled in everything. After drinking, he beat their mother and daughter. Her mother did it for her. She has always tolerated it, and she has to go out to earn tuition fees at a young age. She has always believed that as long as she saves enough money and is admitted to college, she can escape from her stepfather, escape from this kind of life, and take her mother far away. Maybe God just doesn't want happy things to happen. Just before Kingyu's college entrance examination, his stepfather beat his mother to death after drinking. Because they were a couple and they were drunk, he was only convicted of manslaughter in the end. In just 6 years, the life she lost was equal to her mother's miserable life. It is said that one thought turned into a demon. On the day when the verdict was announced, no one knew how she did it. She had a knife hidden on her body. The moment the judge knocked the gavel, she rushed towards her like crazy. The bailiffs who were guarding the suspect were all before he could react. He stabbed to death the culprit who had tortured their mother and daughter for more than 10 years. Intentional murder, committed in court, was of a bad nature, and she was soon sentenced to death. When she went to prison, it happened to be the day Yunsu was falsely accused of being imprisoned. The two girls were similar in age, and they had the same problem, and they soon fell in love with each other. They became each other's only friends in prison. During the darkest time when she was being bullied, Qingyu was always with her. Without her, she didn't know if she could persevere. Yunsu will always remember the smile Qingyu gave her when she came out of the cell on the day she was executed. She was as clean as a camellia, untainted by the world. Yunsu pulled away from the memories. Now Qingyu is still the girl as white as a gardenia. This time, it is her who will protect her smile. There are still more than 10 days left before the submission of works in the National Science and Technology Creation Competition. The theoretical stage of the works of Yunsu, Lin Dai, and Lan Qi has been almost determined. The most important thing now is to turn the theory into reality through concrete practice. As soon as the National Day came, Yunsu got on the plane to the capital. She found a reason to prevaricate Suzayuling. It might be because of Yunsu's grades. Yuntu and Suzayuling's attitude towards her has been getting better and better recently, and Yunyan is also uncharacteristically. He didn't act like a monster, but he might be harboring something bad in his heart, and Yunsu didn't bother to guess. So Yunsu decided to take advantage of the National Day holiday to go to the capital to resolve this matter. Not only because Lin Dai and Lan Qi were in the capital and followed the principle of the minority obeying the majority, but more importantly, both Lin Dai and Lan Qi were in the capital. Hwaking has the top laboratories in the country. As students, they have the right to enter and use it. In particular, Lan Qi from the Department of Computer Science can enter Hwaking Supercomputing Center, which can provide a lot for the implementation of their ideas. Great convenience. Originally, a good invention requires constant experimentation and improvement to finally achieve a perfect effect. However, because the three of us are separated in two places and there are many things on hand, we have not started experimenting yet. Since they are all from the same school, Yunsu is not in a hurry. We will see each other again anyway. After the monthly exams, the National Day holiday will follow. There are many study tour programs in No. 1 middle school. Yao Shuij wanted to participate with Yunsu, but Yunsu had other arrangements and rejected her. Qingyu is also a student of No. 1 middle school. She is in her third year of high school. The tuition fee for No. 1 middle school is not high, but it is also a huge expense for her family. She was specially recruited by No. 1 middle school because of her good grades, and the school waives half of the tuition fee. As well as books, tuition, and fees, she had to figure out the rest. At the capital airport, a tall, thin, smiling boy has long been waiting for him. The boy is Yunsu's teammate Lin Dai. Lan Qi had something to do today and couldn't get away, so he was the only one here. In order to show the boss's attention, Lin Dai waited at the airport early. He even spent a huge sum of money to customize a banner with his long arms spread out, "Welcome Mr. Y to come and guide the work." Lin Dai looked at the people coming and going with good eyes, trying to identify who was the boss. There was no way. The three of them had never exchanged photos. Yunsu and Lan Qi never posted on Moments. Only Lin Dai wanted to post 10 posts a day. Yunsu was very familiar with his appearance. This is a bit similar, except that the boss is not bald, right? It's over, I realized that I don't even know whether the boss is a boy or a girl. Lin Dai slapped his head in annoyance, what a mistake. People were coming and going at the airport, but he turned around too often. Yunsu saw him as soon as he came out. If possible, she wanted to pretend that she didn't know him, so she could only silently put on sunglasses that could cover half of her face. Lin Dai was still looking around, and gently patted his shoulder with one hand. "Let's go." The cold girl seemed to be still in the process of changing her voice with a little bit of muteness. Lin Dai turned around and saw a girl half a head shorter than him looking at her. She was wearing sunglasses and the lower half of her face that was not covered was delicate and small. "Little sister, have you recognized the wrong person?" Lin Dai pointed at herself in confusion. "Yes, it's you." Yunsu pointed to the letter Y on the banner in Lin Dai's hand, and then pointed to herself. "It is me." Lin Dai looked at her, at the banner, and then at her, his eyes widening in disbelief. How can this be? Is this the boss? How old is this girl? 15. 16. Lin Dai screamed crazily in his heart. He still couldn't believe it. You said you are why, how old are you? Is this important? Yunsu was confused. Is this important? Do you think this is important? Lin Dai simply didn't want to believe that the boss who had crushed him for so long was still a high school student. He almost screamed to the sky. Is this really justified? How can you give someone good looks and a genius mind at the same time? Lin Dai felt like he was being compared to a scumbag. With a dull face, he could only believe this fact. Boss, where is the hotel you booked? I called a car and went to put my luggage first, and then I went to our school to find Lan Chi, and we all had a meal together. Lin Dai told him his arrangement. Ken. The car was speeding on the road, and the trees kept falling back. Yunsu was in a good mood looking at the unfamiliar street scene. In her previous life, she was trapped in Lanchange and died in Lanchange. Although in the interstellar world, she had seen countless stars and enjoyed countless scenery, but in the end this earth is the place where she was born and raised, and it is her deepest concern. Soon, we arrived at the hotel Yunsu had booked, Jinyuan under the Junya group. End of this chapter. After Rebirth, boss, she is beautiful and sassy. Author, beautiful. Chapter 17. Chapter 17 Tour of the Painter's Mausoleum. Boss, you go up and put your luggage, I'll wait for you below. After checking in, Lin Dai told Yunsu that it was not easy for a boy to follow him up. Call me Yunsu. Okay, Sister Yun. Yunsu was a little helpless. Why did she have to call her sister? She was obviously younger than everyone else. After Lin Dai watched Yunsu go upstairs, he immediately took out his mobile phone and dialed Lan Chi's mobile phone. Lan Chi was still busy with the task at hand. When he received Lin Dai's call, he understood that he had received why it was rare for him to talk to a person. Curious, he stopped what he was doing and swiped to answer the call. Ah. As soon as Lin Dai's scream came, he silently took the phone away. Lan Chi, I picked up someone. Guess who she is? I'm really hummed. Lin Dai completely ignored his image in the hotel lobby. Just now, Yunsu had been holding back, not daring to reveal that he had never seen the world. She's only 16 years old. She's still a high school student. I feel like a scumbag in front of her. Lan Chi was also shocked. Based on his understanding of Y in the past half-month, he thought that Y was a professional in this industry or a graduate student in this field. Many times, he felt ashamed of Y's conversation and opinions. Unexpectedly, Y was so young, even Lan Chi felt a sense of frustration. Where are you now? Lan Chi asked. The three of them sat down. Lan Chi ordered a lot of Yulan's signature dishes. The dishes were exquisitely presented and tasted very good. Even people like Yunsu who don't pay attention to their appetites ate more. Ling Yu was born 2 years ago and shocked the international painting world. However, this person is very mysterious and has never appeared in public in the past 2 years. There are many versions of rumors about him. For some reason, Yunsu suddenly thought that the name Ling Yu also comes from traditional Chinese medicine. The name is such a coincidence. Lan Chi hesitated and said, why don't we go directly to Yulan? I have pretty much everything here. Let's eat first. After waiting for a while, Lan Chi arrived. He opened the door and looked at Yunsu. Although Lin Dai had already told him that Y was a young girl, it was still incredible to see her in person. He suppressed the shock in his heart and greeted Yunsu. After finishing the meal, Yunsu said goodbye to the two of them and looked at the time. It was only 7 o'clock. Yunsu, who had nothing to do, stepped into an art exhibition next to him. Although it was getting late, there were still many people visiting. Jinyuan, I'll put her luggage with her and come back to school to find you later. The three of them have agreed that they have almost prepared the necessary materials and will go to walking tomorrow. Hello, Lan Chi, also known as Lan Lan is his name on the internet. Yunsu then found out that Yulan was still driving from the capital to Lanchinj. It was impossible to eat without a reservation. When they arrived, they reported the name Lan Chi. As expected of the main store, the overall decoration is more grand than that of Lanchinj. It is said that every plant and tree inside is carefully designed by architects. Each room is named after a traditional Chinese medicine, Qingde, Duruo, feeling, Kongqing. The room Yunsu and the others were in was Pinelia ternata. The paintings on display are all the works of Linju, the hottest young painter today. Most of his works are in the post-impressionist style, with extremely bright colors, bold use of colors, and informality. He believes that art should be loyal to personal feelings and experiences, and based on the artist's subjective emotions transform objective phenomena. In more than half a month, the drone concept proposed by Yunsu has been basically finalized after many improvements. Lan Chi is now studying for a master's degree and a PhD, and he has applied with his mentor to enter the supercomputing center. Originally, people like Yunsu who were not students of the school were not allowed to enter, but Lan Chi was his mentor's favorite student, so he made an exception and allowed them to use it in their free time. Okay, we'll go there right away. Yunsu. Yunsu stopped in front of a painting for a long time. The name of the painting was Waiting. In the painting, a graceful girl sat quietly by the river. Her beautiful and sad face was reflected in the water. Her eyes were filled with autumn water, and she seemed to have countless sad thoughts. It is the boundless galaxy, like devout believers waiting for her gods. The whole painting gives people a very depressing feeling, but there is a glimmer of hope in the depression, although this hope seems far away. Do you like this painting? A clear male voice sounded, breaking the silence. Can't say I like it. She felt a figure appear next to her, but Yunsu didn't move. What do you think the girl is waiting for? The man asked again. I don't know, maybe she's waiting for redemption, but maybe it's better for her to keep waiting. No result may be the best result. There seemed to be another vague sigh in the air. The man was a little surprised. He had asked many people this question, and most of the answers were that girls are waiting for their lovers. This was the first time he heard such an answer. Yunsu withdrew his long gaze and looked at the man next to him. The man kept a safe distance of 1 meter away, keeping it just right so that no one would feel offended. Yunsu was surprised. The man had a straight back, a handsome face, and picturesque eyebrows. He made people feel like spring breeze at the first sight, but it was a pity. The man seems to be unable to walk. He is in a wheelchair. The man received Yunsu's gaze as if he was used to it. He smiled slightly and said, I'm sorry. Why are you saying sorry to me? This is not your problem. Yunsu was even more surprised. The man didn't seem to expect her to answer like this, and his smile became gentler. My name is Ling Yu. By some strange combination of circumstances, he told Yunsu his identity. Yunsu was stunned for a moment, then looked at the signature under the painting. It was Ling Yu. Unexpectedly, the legendary Ling Yu was standing in front of her. It was no wonder that Ling Yu had never appeared in front of the world in the past 2 years, which was really a pity. I'm used to it. Ling Yu seemed to have guessed what Yunsu was thinking. Your leg. Car accident. Somehow, the girl in front of him is obviously not very old, but Ling Yu always subconsciously treats her as her same age, maybe. She really understood the painting, or perhaps there was regret but no sympathy in her eyes. Can I see your legs? Suddenly, Yunsu made a very offensive request. I have studied medicine, Yunsu added. Surprise flashed in Linju's eyes. He thought for a few seconds and did not ask how Yunsu could do medicine at this age. Although he felt a little uncomfortable, he did not refuse Yunsu's kindness. He also wondered why he trusted this strange girl so much. Linja took Yunsu into his exclusive lounge in the exhibition hall. Under Yunsu's gaze, Linja bent down a little embarrassedly and slowly rolled up his trouser legs. Linja was inexplicably afraid to look at Yunsu's eyes. Yunsu didn't notice at all. She squatted down and carefully observed Linja's legs. The calves that hadn't seen the light for a long time were pale and bloodless. Shocking scars were crisscrossing them. The muscles of the calves were atrophied. This was enough to prove that the car accident that the man suffered had how serious. She also reached out and pinched Linja's leg. Linja flinched. It was because he was not used to other people's touch, and he was about to say something to tell Yunsu to stop. I can cure it. Yunsu raised his eyes and looked at him seriously. What did you say? Lingyu turned his head suddenly and asked her in disbelief, his tone trembling and his heart pounding. I said I can cure you. Yunsu smiled slightly, full of confidence. End of this chapter. After Rebirth, Boss, she is beautiful and sassy. Author, beautiful. Chapter 18. Chapter 18. Meeting Qin Jiao for the first time. Yunsu was not innocent. Although Linja's condition was serious, it was not without solutions. Yunsu didn't know how much she had learned during the decades of interstellar life. She was sure of curing Linja's leg. Linja was stunned by Yunsu's words and was greatly shocked. In the past few years, his family and friends had searched for famous doctors at home and abroad for his legs, but all of them were sentenced to death. He had already accepted this reality after being disappointed again and again, but now the person in front of him told him that she could cure his leg. He shouldn't have believed it, but when he saw Yunsu's sincere eyes, he couldn't help but feel a little sad. Hopefully, maybe. His thin body was shaking uncontrollably, and his voice was trembling. Are you serious? Fortunately, your condition is not too bad. I am at least 70% sure about the combination of medicine and acupuncture, but this process will be very painful. Yunsu explained the situation in advance. 70%? 70%. Linja's breathing became heavy. Compared with being crucified by countless doctors, this number sounds like a fantasy. Pain is nothing. He has been in pain all the time in the past 2 years. He clasped the wheelchair tightly with both hands, so hard that his joints turned white. As long as my legs can be cured, I can endure any pain. Okay, let me prescribe you a prescription first. Some of the medicines are relatively rare. You need to gather together the medicinal materials first. Then if I don't have any needles on hand to perform the acupuncture, I will also trouble you to find someone to make a custom-made pair of needles. I will tell you the specific size, and the best material is gold needles. Huang Shiping, the miracle doctor of acupuncture, said, there are 3 good qualities of golden needles. They are pure in nature and can penetrate the flesh without being poisonous. The first good thing is that they are soft and there is no pain in the orifices. The second good thing is that the body is strong and does not break after many years. The third good thing is that it is strong. Yunsu stated his requests one by one, and Linju agreed. He was like a drowning man grabbing the last straw. I'm not from the capital, I'm just here to do something. You can contact me after you collect the medicinal materials. I don't have much time to go to school in Lanjing, so it's best if you come to me. Late at night, the whole city seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. It was so quiet that it made people panic. Click. With an inaudible sound, Yunsu, who should have been sleeping soundly, opened her eyes. After 10 years in prison, she had already developed a beast-like behavior. Intuition. The room Yunsu booked was the presidential suite on the top floor of Jinyuan. In addition to buy yes 2 million, she also had a thank you gift from the Lian family. She was not short of money. She had never been a person who had wronged herself. People, spend what you have to spend. After the two exchanged contact information, Yunsu sent the prescription to Linju. Seeing that it was getting late, he said goodbye. Linju had difficulty moving and asked his assistant to take Yunsu back to the hotel. The person who came was wearing black clothes, as if a ball of ink had blended into the darkness. A ray of moonlight showed through the gap in the curtains, and Yunsu could only see a rough outline. "I'm going to Lanchinj," Lingyu agreed without hesitation. The soft big bed was slightly raised, and the sleeping person seemed to have his face buried in the quilt. The visitor didn't think much. He slowly raised his hand and saw that it turned out to be a gun. With a slight movement of his finger, he gently pulled the trigger. Bang! The gun with the silencer made a dull sound, and feathers flew. Although it is expensive, it is indeed worth the price. After Yunsu washed up, took a nice bath, sorted out the information needed for tomorrow, and prepared to go to bed. There is someone. Without any time to think, Yunsu gently lifted the quilt without making a sound. She walked barefoot to the darkest corner of the room and held her breath. Her ears moved invisibly. The whole room was extremely quiet, but her ears were so strong that she clearly heard the breathing of another person. At night, the exhibition hall has long been closed, and only the weak wall lamp is still on. In front of the silent portrait, Lingyu stares at his own work for a long time. In the painting waiting, there seems to be tears flashing in the corners of his eyes, maybe. He really waited. It was quiet, deathly quiet, no unexpected sounds or blood stains appeared. The man stepped forward and lifted the quilt, but there was nothing. Where are the people? Not good. The visitor suddenly felt something bad. He turned around in a hurry, but it was too late. A sound broke through the air, and the solid wood chair was swung towards his head at lightning speed. Bang! Seemed to be a powerful sound. The moment his consciousness disappeared, he saw the person coming clearly. Wait, why is something wrong? Yunsu threw away the chair in her hand and turned on the light. The man lying on the ground was unconscious. He was wearing a mask and couldn't see his face clearly. She pulled off the man's mask and was speechless. What age is this? Learn from ancient assassins. Under the mask was an ordinary face, the kind that would be easily forgotten when walking on the street. Yunsu thought silently, who would pay a lot of money to hire someone to kill her? It shouldn't be. Yunsu thought about the people she had come into contact with since she came back. At most, she had some minor grievances with them, but there was absolutely no big hatred. As for Yunyan, Yunsu had never thought about how she could recruit someone with a gun. Killer. After thinking about it all to no avail, Yunsu simply gave it up. She rummaged around in the room to find a rope and tied the man tightly. She was about to throw it aside and go back to sleep, and deal with it tomorrow. Bang bang bang. There was a knock on the door. It was already 1 o'clock in the morning. Who could it be at this time? Yunsu picked up the fruit knife on the coffee table and hid it in his sleeve. The tip of the knife pointed out. He slowly walked to the door. Through the peephole, he saw a man in a suit standing with his hands tied. Who is it? Yunsu asked after the man knocked a few more times, his voice lazily and impatiently, as if he had just been woken up and nothing had happened. Recognizing that it was a girl, the man outside the door paused and said, "Miss, what happened? I live across the street and I heard a sound just now. Do you need help? Who is a normal person who stays up late at night and listens to the noise from next door?" Yunsu was not sure about the identity of the people coming. They were either from a group or had a grudge. Can't they let people sleep peacefully in the middle of the night? Let's solve it together. Yunsuda opened the door, and the man outside the door was startled. He seemed to have not expected that it was a young girl. He thought he had guessed wrong and was about to say excuse me. The closed door opposite opened, showing that someone had been observing behind the door. A tall man walked out. The man was about 1.9 meters tall. He was as handsome as a god, and his aura was overwhelming, giving people a strong sense of oppression. Yunsu was stunned for a moment, An unknown flash of light flashed in her eyes, and her body relaxed. The man did not miss her change for a moment. "Miss Yoon, I didn't expect it to be you." The man's voice was low and charming, and he pointed out Yunsu's identity when he opened his mouth. A look in his eyes made the man next to Yunsu step back. "I saw you last time in Lanchinge. You saved Qin Cheng and Lian Yu." Fearing that the girl would not believe her and become wary, he added the scene at that time. Yunsu recalled it, but to no avail. "Master Qin, why don't you go out to admire the moon at night?" Yunsu's voice was relaxed and teasing. Unexpectedly, Yunsu also revealed the identity of the man as soon as he opened his mouth. He was Qin Xiao, the leader of the Qin family in the capital. Qin Xiao's eyes were deep, like whirlpools. "Do you know me?" Qin Xiao's mood did not change. Yunsu smiled with an inexplicable meaning. What a joke, who doesn't know the famous fifth master Qin in the capital? There are many people who know about Qin Xiao, but this is definitely not what Yunsu, a girl who grew up in a remote countryside, should know. Qin Xiao recalled Yunsu's information and found that for the first time, he could not see through a person. "Would you like to come in and sit down?" Qin Xiao somehow made an invitation. Qinju, who lowered his presence next to him, glanced at his father-in-law. "Is it really okay to invite a girl into the room so late at night?" "Okay," Yunsu agreed. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Rebirth, boss, she is beautiful and sassy. Author, beautiful. Chapter 19. Chapter 19. Arriving in Hwoking for the first time. That's right. Yunsu stopped and pointed to her room. That, deal with it. She didn't think it was troublesome, so she simply called Qin Jiao's people, who were related to them anyway. Qin Ju stared at Yunsu's house with wide eyes. A foot wearing a black leather shoe was exposed across the entrance. He looked at Qin Xiao, who nodded slightly. He immediately took out his phone and called someone to deal with it. Yunsu entered the room and saw the decoration that was completely different from his own room, as if it was tailor-made for him. He couldn't help but speculate about the boss behind Jinyuan. He was not only Qin Xiao, but also had a close relationship with Qin Xiao. Shallow. Yunsu sat down on the sofa politely. Qin Xiao sat opposite her, and Qin Ju retreated to the corner so as not to disturb the two of them chatting. Qin Xiao looked at her and was the first to break the silence. "I have always wanted to thank Miss Yoon for helping Qin Cheng last time, but I didn't expect to meet her in the capital this time. In any case," Qin Xiao remembered Yunsu's love. "It's nothing, it's just a matter of convenience, but the fifth master knocked on the door of a little girl of mine late at night. I don't know why the fifth master doesn't seem to be a helpful person," she said as if she knew Qin Xiao very well. "Little girl?" Qin Ju on the side twitched his mouth. "Is there a little girl like her? The unfortunate killer hasn't woken up yet." Qin Xiao was not angry at being pushed back by her. He pondered for a moment and said, "The person who attacked you in your room was actually targeting me. I knew it a long time ago and was waiting for him to come to the door. I don't know why he made a mistake and went there. Your room, you were implicated by me. I'm sorry." Qin Jiao told everything, but Yunsu didn't know what to say. "From Lanchinge to Beijing, I can't escape you, uncle and nephew, can I?" Yunsu was helpless. There was a smile in Qin Jiao's eyes. "It's too late today. I'll treat Miss Yoon to dinner tomorrow to make amends for your crime." There was a hint of coaxing in his tone. "Lin Dai, why do you bring outsiders into the laboratory casually? Just take a look. Who is responsible for damaging the instruments by touching them casually? Teacher Wang dislikes this kind of student the most," Su Shui said to Lin Dai. "It is worthy of being a century-old famous school, with the atmosphere of historical heritage blowing in your face. The scenery of Hwoking Garden is just right, and there are many students visiting it." Lin Dai, who was half a beat behind, hurriedly stepped forward and saw that it was someone he knew. He said hurriedly, "Sister Sue, this is my friend, not from our school. I just brought her to visit. Lindai is a major in this. The senior sister, a second-year graduate student, is also the student of the graduate tutor Lindai wants to apply for, named Sushwe. The two have had contact before." The next day, she made an appointment with Lindai and Lan Chi to go to Hwaking. Yunsu got up very early. She picked up her phone and saw the message from Qin Xiao, asking her about today's arrangements and whether she had time to eat together. Yunsu casually replied unsure. Yunsu was tired after struggling for so long. Soon a long breathing sound came from the bed, and he didn't notice that the phone beside the bed vibrated. What instrument is so delicate that it will break if touched? "Hey, who are you? Who allowed you to touch me?" said a girl in a white coat with pretty short hair next to her. She frowned and looked at Yunsu. Chinju in the corner looked at his father, who was in a trance, and for some reason he had a hunch in his heart that there might be many opportunities to come into contact with Miss Yoon in the future. Yunsu looked at her strangely, and went back to her room without saying yes or no. After finishing packing, she took a taxi to Hwaking University. Lan Chi was stopped by his tutor. Lindai first took Yunsu to visit Hwaking University. Arrived at the large laboratory, Lindai took Yunsu in. Although it was during the National Day holiday, there were still many students doing experiments, but they were not confidential experiments, so not many people paid attention to Yunsu when he entered. Shortly after Yunsu returned to her room, she received a friend's look on WeChat. She had a pure black avatar and her nickname was also a simple word for Qin Xiao. Yunsu casually clicked through, not surprised how he knew her WeChat. Looking at the countless precision instruments in the laboratory, Yunsu was in a trance. She seemed to have returned to the interstellar world. She saw herself in white clothes busy in the laboratory. She couldn't help but stepped forward and reached out to gently touch a machine. "Yes, yes, I will pay attention." Lindai was holding back his anger in his heart but apologized again and again on his face. Sushwe was holding the experiment record book in her hand. Yunsu was very close, and she saw it as soon as she raised her eyes. The handwriting was pretty and clear. Anyone who could get into Hwaking was certainly not a fool, just. "Senior sister, this place is wrong." Yunsu pointed at a piece of data in her record book with her white fingers, kindly reminding her that she also followed Lindai's call and called her Sushwe. Sushwe looked at Yunsu as if she was crazy. "What are you shouting? Are you a student of our school? Just shout, what year are you in, which school are you in? There is something wrong with my data? Where did you draw the conclusion? Just a glance? How ridiculous." Lindai was shocked when the boss actually said, "Senior sister Sue, she is very powerful. Although she hasn't gone to college yet, I can't even compare to her, and you haven't gone to college yet? Lindai, are you stupid? Take people out quickly. This is not a place where anyone can run wild." Sushwe interrupted him with a sharp voice. Lindai didn't know why, but he had blind confidence in Yunsu. "Really, you believe her?" Yunsu looked at Lindai, not knowing what he was thinking. She was also a little surprised why Lindai believed in her so much. She didn't bother to argue and just stretched out her hand. What are you doing?" Yunsu snatched the notebook from Sushwe's hand as soon as her eyes were dazzled. "This place is like this." Yunsu walked to the instruments needed for Sushwe's experiment. Before Lindai and Sushwe could react, she had already skillfully operated each machine, and she had all the step-by-step instructions. It was as familiar as a textbook, as if she had done it thousands of times. Lindai and Sushwe were dumbfounded. 10 minutes later, Yunsu picked up the pen and revised it on the notebook, then handed it back to Sushwe sideways. Sushwe looked at the result and hurriedly looked at the results displayed on the instrument, then looked at the data in the notebook, and looked at Yunsu in disbelief. Was she really wrong? Not far away, someone witnessed the whole process of Yunsu's experiment. "Xiaosu, are all students today so awesome?" an old man with almost white hair said to the middle-aged man next to him. Although the old man is nearly 70 years old, his eyes are clear and sparkle with wisdom. The man next to him is elegant, and he has the aura of a scholar. "Hello, principal." Students kept passing by and greeting the middle-aged man. He was none other than the president of Huaqing University, Su Huajing. Su Huajing also sighed, "I don't know which department this student is from." The two came late and did not hear Lin Dai say that Yunsu had not gone to college yet. The old man and Su Huajing walked forward. Su Shui and Lin Dai looked at them and hurriedly said, "Hello, principal." Su Huajing didn't say anything, but the old man spoke. "Which department are you a student in?" he asked Yunsu. "I'm not from Huaqing," Yunsu answered truthfully. The old man immediately turned to look at Su Huajing, his eyes full of dissatisfaction. Such a good young man didn't win over to Huaqing? Su Huajing was also stunned. Which school had robbed someone from them? "It doesn't matter. You can come to our school for graduate school in the future." The old man smiled again when he met Yunsu. "But..." Yunsu touched her nose, "I'm only in my first year of high school, so it's still a little early for me to go to graduate school." What? The old man and Su Huajing said in unison, with surprised faces on their faces. End of this chapter. After Rebirth, boss, she is beautiful and sassy. Author, beautiful. Chapter 20. Chapter 20 Academician Meng Hui. "You mean you're only in your first year of high school?" The old man's eyes were even more eager. What a seedling, what a seedling. Su Huajing also thought of this. "How did you find out about her problem?" The old man was interested in taking a test. Su Shui's face turned red and white next to her. She was embarrassed in front of the principal. She wanted to find a crack in the ground and crawl in. Yunsu looked at him strangely. "Can't you tell at a glance?" Everyone was choked immediately. Lin Dai burst into tears. "Boss, not everyone is as perverted as you. You can see the problem at a glance and we are not good at it." Su Shui was also shocked to the point of doubting life. Where did this monster come from? In fact, it was not that Yunsu did Versailles on purpose. In fact, in her eyes, the results of an experiment of this level could be seen at a glance, and the data errors were even more obvious. The old man's eyes were brighter and his tone was kind. "What's your name?" "Yunsu." "Classmate Yun, I hope to see you in Huaqing in 3 years." The old man looked at her with encouraging eyes. Maybe Yunsu smiled nonchalantly. "I haven't thought about it yet." Yunsu took off her gloves, wiped the sweat from her head, and was about to say goodbye. Lin Dai and Lan Qi looked at her, and their evaluation of Yunsu went up a notch in their hearts. Yunsu's various performances were like a person who studied with great concentration. After many years of research, they were very good at everything they did. Even though they had always been praised by others, they could only accept the defeat. Lin Dai was even more grateful that he had found a big boss to guide him, otherwise they would have been the ones to face such a terrifying opponent. What's the meaning? If I can study in Huaqing, do I still need to consider it? Does she know that this is the best university in China? Although they were full of questions about Yunsu, both of them were smart enough not to ask any more questions. Lan Qi sent a message to Lin Dai. The matter on his side was almost settled, so Lin Dai took Yunsu to meet him. For Yunsu, it was easy to create this drone, but it was difficult to find substitutes for many materials in the interstellar era. She really spent a lot of effort on this. The three of them went through continuous simulation experiments in the laboratory and supercomputing center. Has begun to bear fruit, but still needs some improvements. I'm Meng Hui. If you have any study problems in the future, you can contact me or send me an email. I will definitely reply when I see it. The old man handed Yunsu a business card. As soon as the old man and Su Huajing left, Lin Dai seemed to have just come to his senses and took a deep breath. He is Meng Huai, it's actually Meng Huai, Lin Dai was about to scream. Next to him, Su Huajing, the principal of Huaking, looked at him in surprise. Does Mr. Meng value this little girl so much? The outside world didn't know how many people wanted to get Mr. Meng's contact information, but he just gave it to this little girl. Qin Jiao replied quickly, okay, wait for me. You don't know Meng Huai? How could you not know Meng Huai? Lin Dai wanted to grab her shoulders and shake her to wake her up. Meng Huai, one of the most outstanding physicists of our time, an academician of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. You have made great contributions to Chinese physics, and you don't even know it. Who is it? Is he famous? Yunsu was confused. It was getting late, and the three of them stopped what they were doing. Anyway, there was still time, so there was no need to be in such a hurry. Su Shui also reacted, her expression as if she was in a dream. Yunsu still looked confused. In her previous life, she grew up in a small town and spent 10 years in prison. She really knew very little about the outside world. Besides, Meng Huai was not a person of her status. It was within reach of her former self. Lin Dai sometimes really doesn't understand Yunsu. She can speak clearly about various scientific experimental theories and has almost no blind spots in her knowledge, but she doesn't even know about such a famous scientist. Yunsu took out her mobile phone and saw the message from Qin Xiao, asking her where she was. Yunsu thought about it and replied, I'm at Huaking University. Lan Qi was waiting alone in the supercomputing center of the Computer Institute. After a while, Yunsu and Lin Dai arrived. The required materials were already prepared and were waiting for the three of them to conduct assembly experiments. Okay, thank you. Yunsu took it politely and put it into his pocket, not thinking how important it was at all. Yunsu walked out of Huaking and waited for a while at the school gate. Soon, a black Hummer stopped at the gate of Huaking. The window slowly slid down, revealing Qin Jiao's face that was full of anger for both humans and gods. He got out of the car himself and opened the backseat door for Yunsu. Qinju, who was driving, had a shocked expression. He had never seen his fifth master treat a woman so gentlemanly. Thank you. After getting in the car, the Hummer galloped on the road, and soon they arrived at Yulan. Yunsu wanted to laugh a little. Why did it always end up in this place? Qin Jiao had already made a reservation, and the two of them entered the private room. Qin Jiao asked about Yunsu's taboos and preferences, and ordered some dishes. Miss Yun, I really appreciate your help to Qin Cheng last time. Qin Jiao's words were absolutely sincere. No need, it's really easy. Okay, then I won't be polite to Miss Yun. If you need help in the future, you can ask Qin Cheng to help. If he can't solve it, you can come to me, Qin Jiao promised. Okay, Yunsu agreed casually. Although it was the first time for the two of them to have dinner together, the strange thing was that the atmosphere was extremely harmonious. Qin Jiao's cell phone rang and he answered the call. What's going on in Yulan? Where? I have a friend with me. Qin Jiao looked at Yunsu for a while. Okay, wait a minute. Qin Jiao hung up the phone and said to Yunsu, will you have time later? How? A few friends asked me to get together, do you want to come with me? Yunsu has nothing to do, okay, just relax. Qin Jiao looked at her, a smile flashed in his eyes. Miss Yun seems to be very relieved about me. What's the point? You can't beat me either. Qin Jiao recalled Qin Cheng's description that day and the tragic situation of the killer last night, and fell silent, as if he was really not sure. The night is intoxicating, the lights are bright, and the devil is in the private room of the club where Qin Jiao and others often go. Yuan Zhou, did fifth brother say you'll come over later? Zhou Ye was lying lazily on the sofa, his peach blossom eyes were intoxicated, and his shirt had two buttons buttoned casually, without any formal appearance. Qin Jiao Xin Wu, That's what all the friends who are familiar with him call him. When asked, Bayu and Joe took a sip of wine and said, it should be, it seems that a friend came with him. A hint of interest flashed under the gold-rimmed glasses. Fifth brother, does he have any other friends besides us? Joe was surprised. Bayu and Joe glanced at him and said that he had the ability to say it in front of the fifth brother, but he was also curious about the people brought by the fifth brother. There were very few people who could be called friends by the fifth brother. With a buzz sound, Bayu and Joe's phone vibrated. He looked at it with a strange look on his face. What's wrong? Fifth brother said that we should not bring some messy people, be more clean, and don't bring bad children. What the hell? Joe and Bayu and Joe stared at each other. Where did the child come from? Who is fifth brother going to bring? The two of them became more and more curious. Bayu and Joe waved his hand and asked all the people serving in the private room to exit. End of this chapter.